These people are coming on to the social networks and demonizing people who are living our lifestyle because they are drug addicts. They are addicted to sugar and they cannot give up their drug of choice. You ask them to give up bread, pasta, rice, it puts the fear of God into their eyes.
Hello, carnivores, and welcome to session number 43. We've got some drama in the nutrition space, and our good friend Richard Anthony Smith is here to help us sort this out as we examine the facts about whether highly competitive performance athletes, including but not limited to bodybuilding, should consume carbohydrates to perform at their very best, and whether it is really healthy or not to be on a carb-restricted diet. I love how they always use the word restricted, saying that we're people saying that you shouldn't have fun and enjoy life, but whatever, more on that later. So Richard Smith is the UK's leading nutrition expert as seen on TV. He is a GBO champion professional bodybuilder, managing director of KETO PRO, host of the KETO PRO podcast, and annual Carnivore-a-thon co-host with Stephen Thomas. I met Richard while speaking at last year's Carnivore-a-thon, and after realizing that he was also a bodybuilder, a dad with a young daughter, and has also basically dedicated his life to changing people's lives with the carnivore diet, we obviously became best buddies. He has been highly requested to come back on the show. Check out number 17, where we discussed endurance and hypertrophy training on a zero-carb diet. Fun fact, that's actually been our most popular episode so far. So thanks again for that, sir. Melina Smith, no relation, just coincidence, is a Brazilian, now American natural meat-based bikini competitor. Unfortunately, she's been receiving some mean comments on social media, criticizing her for encouraging others and sharing her journey competing on a meat-based diet without the use of carbs. If you know me, you know that I'm a coach first and foremost, so I rely heavily on the wisdom and guidance of top doctors and nutritionists to simplify fundamental concepts for myself and our athletes to use. There's no better man that I can think of to sort out these false beliefs about carbohydrates so that hopefully some of these hard-headed critics will finally learn to stop repeating the same 3 to 4 unoriginal, dumb things that they hear from their personal trainer at the gym. Before we get into the meat, here is our Spotify podcast review of the week. It is from Aaron Jenkins in Winchester, Virginia, United States. My favorite one that you've done yet. Thank you very much, pal. That was session number 35, The Truth About Insulin, Metabolism, and Gut Health with Dr. Robert Kiltz. Definitely one of my top favorites. This man is absolutely brilliant. Richard, welcome back to Carnivore Coaches Corner.
Man, what an introduction. I think you are going to have to cut that and edit it out and send it to me so I can post that, because that was the best introduction that I have ever had. Thank you so much.
Oh, man.
Incredible to be back. Incredible to be back.
I appreciate it, bro. You have done so much for me, for this channel. I mean, for all of our clients, and I don't take one bit of it for granted, man.
I appreciate that, man. Way too kind. Way too kind.
What have you been up to lately? What's new with KETO PRO?
So for me, you know, you mentioned there that I was a pro bodybuilder. Something I've come away from. As you can see, I'm half the size.
I wouldn't say that. You are definitely still peeled though too.
Yeah, the abs are still there. I'm still rocking the veins. And when I do run, so I've gone into running and cycling. I competed the weekend, as it happens, for my 40th birthday, believe it or not. Out of 381 competitors, I came 4th on chip time, 5th according to the cross the line results, but 4th on chip time. And if that race was 2 days later, I would have won my age category. But because I was still classed as 35 to 39, I came 3rd in age. But and I'm new to running. I'm incredibly new to running. So that's what I've got into. But in order to do that, I've dropped the better part of 20 kilos. So I've gone from around 90k down to 70. But that said, when I had the pictures through yesterday, in my vest, I'm still way, way, way too big to be a runner. You know, these runners are like bean poles, and I've still got the delts and whatnot. But
Nice.
so yeah, still rocking the delts as best I can.
I think,
Anyway.
yeah, running and bodybuilding are two completely polar opposite aesthetic goals.
Yeah.
I've been limiting my running to once a week right now, and so I've been going for a 10K. Last week was 11K, and so I'm pushing myself just a little bit further. Definitely inspired by Jake Thomas. I'm like, okay, maybe we can do a marathon this year. I'm not sure, but it's definitely a backseat to my aesthetic goals because I'm prepping the guest pose again for the Open Natural in Seattle. So as long as it doesn't take away from that. But I think that running's great for leg conditioning, though.
Yeah, it's something that I've neglected my entire life. I'm new to running. I never did any cardio when I was competing professionally. I would cut purely through diet. You see these guys in the gym who would train for 45 minutes to an hour, and then they'd go running for an hour after. I never had to do any of that, and I became ridiculously peeled. 2% body fat on stage, and that's why I used to win, was because nobody else could match that condition. But running has definitely got its place. I didn't intend to gravitate into running. I injured. I was going to go into powerlifting because I wanted to prove our lifestyle in another sport. So, I checked my top lifts in regards to the squat, bench press, and deadlift, and I would have been in top 10 in the UK between the tested and non-tested federations, which means out of everybody, including people who were supplementing with anabolics, I would have been top 10 if I hit my top lifts, all in one day. So I decided to gravitate into that and begin training for that. I tore my pec, so that put me out of action, and a local running club who I was working with on nutrition asked me to join and start running and cycling, and I've never gone back. So that's that. Yeah, that's what I am currently. I still love the weight training, but my competitiveness has driven me down this pathway. I prefer the physique this way. I think somewhere in between is healthy. But if you want to achieve a goal, then you need to be willing to pull out all the stops. And I did when I was bodybuilding. And now I'm sort of doing the same in regards to the duathlons and eventually triathlons. Until last year, I'd never really done any running or cycling ever, or swimming. I've started the running and the cycling, but I still haven't started the swimming. I can't swim. Wow. I can float, but you chuck me in the water, I'll be fine. But I'm not going to be competitive, So that for me is the next step. But first, I need to continue to build my performance in regards to running and cycling. And unfortunately, the bigger that I am on top, the heavier that I am, the more weight I've got to carry. So as much as I prefer that physique, in order to be competitive, I need to be considerably lighter. So I'm making lots of sacrifices in order to start proving, our lifestyle in a different arena. So that's what I'm doing. Wow. How about you?
Dude, I absolutely love it. I kind of want to stay on topic, and if I start telling my story and everything, then we'll get off topic. But I do have some questions for you though, and I do want to catch up a little bit at the tail end. But we need to get to the bottom of this. So last question though, but before we do, if I may, while we're still on what you were just talking about, is have you ever gone through a phase, just of curiosity, since you transitioned to being a carnivore, where you got fluffy in the off season, or like where you gained unwanted weight and got like past a body higher than a body fat composition than you were comfortable with, or have you found it relatively easy to maintain a respectable physique year round?
So now I maintain, and towards the end of my time competing, even during a bulk, I was always fairly ripped with abs. I never lost the lumps and the bumps or the veins. Nice. But I did, in the early days, I did a lot of experimentation. I introduced carbs. I'm not against carbohydrate. People think that because of what we do, we think the carbs are the demon and this, that. But look, these things are tools. And if something is going to improve me aesthetically or allow me to achieve a goal, I would consider it. So a lot of people were talking about introducing carbohydrate along with living a ketogenic carnivore type lifestyle as being dual fueled and all of this sort of stuff. So I experimented. I've done everything in regards to carb loading, back feeding, all this sort of stuff. That's the only time that I would go fluffy, is when I was playing around with carbohydrate. When I took them out completely, I was always ripped and shredded. Yes, I'd put a little bit of fluff on, but I still had veins through my stomach. You know, you don't get veins on top of your abs if you are, you know, fat. You know, so yeah. And look, there may even be a place. I used to introduce carbohydrates in regards to for aesthetic purposes, which we covered in the last podcast.
Yep.
You know, 2 days before. But that was it. It was purely aesthetic. Beyond that, there was no benefit to me. And I've even tried.
Yeah, and see, which is so funny, because I've found it better to just refeed on fat.
Yeah.
That's my favorite way to fill out, and I'm way harder and drier than when I fill out on carbs. And then I'm not worried about spilling over too. I mean, I've never spilled over on fat. It's just like the more that I eat, the more my body soaks it up, especially if it's tallow or something that's like really bioavailable. But yeah, carbohydrates, I'll gain weight and I'll get bigger, but always at the expense of my conditioning. So so that's just when you have to know your competition. Like if I'm going up against guys that are just way bigger than me, yeah, okay, I'll fill up on carbs. I could probably use the extra water weight and everything, right? If I'm around guys that are like really on top of their conditioning game, and I want to make sure that I will stay on my conditioning, then I'll refeed with fat way before doing it the old school way.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. And you know, you hit the nail on the head. It's a tool, but it's not a tool that is used or needs to be used in the way that people think it should.
Yeah, and I like that context, and I think that's actually a perfect. I think that's a perfect segue into our topic of the day too. Is that we were just talking before we started recording that, I mean, if you have something in your life that like you believe that your overall quality of life is better because of it, then leave it in there. Like, and if that's carbs, then you know, no problem. But be honest with yourself. Like, is there really a benefit to what you're consuming, or are you making an excuse? Like, is this an addictive tendency that you'd probably be better off without, right? And is what you're experiencing actually a problem if you're missing carbs, or is it more like a withdrawal symptom? And I mean, at the end of the day, you drink coffee sometimes. I drink pre-workout sometimes. It's artificially sweetened. Like, I know that that's not good for me, but some days I really enjoy it, and I don't think it's that big of a sin. and I think carbs within reason are the same. But I'm just really careful ever putting them in people's plans, because I find it way harder for people to adhere to a diet that is heavy in processed foods and that is heavy in highly palatable foods. They're addictive. They ramp up your appetite. It makes it hard to stick to it. And so if you have like specifically a fat loss goal, for me, it just makes the most common sense that that's the macronutrient that your body just does not need, and you're better off hormonally, and your sleep's going to be better. Your appetite's going to be under control. It's the lead domino where everything starts from. So yeah, like I don't demonize carbs. To your point, you don't demonize carbs. At the end of the day, we just care about the person finishing their plan and sticking with it and being better by the time that they're done. And we see carbs in plans hurting more people than it is helping them.
You have hit the nail 100% on the head, because I am not wedded to keto or carnivore.
Yeah, me neither.
I gravitated into this I was incredibly sick. You know, for those that don't know my story, check it out on Coach's previous podcast. But the long story short is I was type 2 diabetic, clinically obese, suffered with chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety, arthritic pains, daily debilitating migraines that would make me blind, severe skin conditions. And I could barely walk up the stairs without stopping or being severe out of breath. So I've gravitated into this for health. Now, you know, a super long story short, my journey has taken me into working with people who suffer with a whole host of illnesses, from diabetes all the way up to cancer. And I work with athletes, amateur, all the way up to professional. So my goal is to work with that client to achieve whatever goal it is that they want to achieve. Now, especially with the athletes, you know, the consumption of carbohydrates is always a hot topic. And it is something that I have experimented with. And I genuinely believe this, probably more than anybody else on the planet. When you compare, you know, high carb to being super strict carnivore and no carb at all, and then introducing carbs for, you know, pre-training, post-training, cycling, all this sort of stuff. I've tried it for years and years and years. For me, it only hinders my athletic performance. For every athlete I have ever worked with, it has only hindered their athletic performance. For you, the listener who is introducing or still utilizing carbs, and you believe it's conferring a benefit, then it may be, you know, and that's fine. But the likelihood is, if you remove them completely, your athletic performance will improve. But again, as you say, if these things are working for you, if that's what keeps you on the straight and narrow, I'm not here to demonize carbohydrates. I've got hard facts to show you. You know, as we get into these questions that you have there for me, we'll rip these apart. We're going to show people the real science, and it is up to them to make their educated decision. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to the trainer in the gym. And I say that, I mean, these people give us advice, and you know, what I mean by that is take it on board, but don't believe it to be golden. Do your own research.
Yep.
And even so with me, everything that I reference, you know, these are clinical trials research papers. Go off and read them. Go off and study them, and do the same with what everybody else is telling you to do, because the evidence is out there, and I am in this for optimal health. So if something confers a benefit, I will be using it. And I live a pretty strict lifestyle, which is free of carbohydrate. But let's get into things, and let's start ripping things apart. And yeah,
good. Yeah, everything that you just said, like that. That's why I respect you so much, bro. Like the integrity that you have to not just teach what you believe in, but help people, but help teach people to do their own research on their own, because people just don't know where to start. I mean, most of what we hear, it's funded by Bill Gates, it's funded by Google. It's it's kind of a losing battle. To take taking your health into your own hands is something that that I think is everybody's responsibility. It's your own personal responsibility. Okay. So we have a comment from one of Melina's posts. See what this has been driving her nuts too. It's, you know, she's posting what's working for her. She's posting what she's excited about. She's posting the stuff that I've been teaching her. I think that I don't know, maybe she's just like an easier target and doesn't look like intimidating like I do or something, because she's saying the same things that I am, and I'm getting nothing but love from my followers. But anyway. Okay, so this person at Chelsea Honey, I think generally speaking, it's the calories you need, and not everyone wants to be on a keto diet. I would prefer to eat more carb than fat, but indeed it is the protein that is crucial. You still need all three macros to stabilize hormone production.
So let's break that down. Protein, I agree. Protein is the most important macronutrient. Eat the protein as nature intended. And the reason the protein is the most important macronutrient is because in nature, protein comes with fat. An egg is equal numbers of protein and fat. Almost a piece of steak is protein and fat. Chicken breast with the skin on is protein and fat. Salmon is protein and fat. Nature provides us with this perfectly packaged present that contains every macro and micronutrient that we need. And out of the macronutrients, they are protein and fat. The human body does not need exogenous carbohydrate whatsoever. Nothing at all. Nada. There's not one cell in the human body that's made of carbohydrate. Every cell in the body is made of protein. Every cell in the body is made of fat. Yes, some parts in the body require glucose, but the body can make glucose through a process called gluconeogenesis. Glucose being sugar or glucose, neo being new, and genesis the creation of. The body will make glucose as it needs to. And I've seen this during my transition into running. I'm zero carb. I don't consume any sugar whatsoever, no carbohydrate. I wore a continuous blood glucose monitor when I started running. And after a 10K event a few months ago, I measured my blood glucose and it was 10.6 or something. And that is incredibly high, which is what you'd expect for a carb athlete who was training. But when you run, your body releases glycogen from the liver and muscle, converts it into glucose, so your blood glucose goes up. So this you expect. How is that possible from a person that does not consume any carbohydrate? The body makes it. And my body makes glucose. It still stores glycogen, and the body will still make glucose, but it is demand-driven or predominantly demand-driven. It happens when the body needs it to. Yep. We do not need any exogenous carbohydrate, and this has been stated in countless amount of studies. Carbohydrate is not required for life, zero. So we do not need carbohydrate. The brain, the erythrocyte, the red blood cell, that needs glucose. But again, we make glucose, and the brain is the only other part of the body that may need glucose. It does use glucose, but in the presence of ketones, beta-hydroxybutyrate, it preferences, if you were to supply glucose and beta-hydroxybutyrate to the brain, it would preference the beta-hydroxybutyrate around 70 to 80%. So in the presence of both, it preferences ketones. We can't test, and I genuinely believe that we may be able to survive completely without even supplying any glucose to the brain, but that is something we can't test, because if it didn't work, we would kill someone.
that would not be ethical.
It's not ethical. But look, you do not need any carbohydrate, and these comments baffle me, because within our community, we have understood this for quite some time, that the body makes carb and we don't need it through our diet. And I forget these people exist. It's this information is so outdated. It's so antiquated that people who are still speaking of carbohydrate for health, well-being, and athletic performance, I instantly lose respect for them. And it just baffles me when people throw these comments out there, because we've known for years and years and years that carbohydrates are not required. Not only not required, but they are likely hindering your athletic performance. And we can get more into that, but it's before we address the rest of that question in regards to hormone production.
Yeah, okay, I was going to say, because that's man, I could go on for 10 minutes on that, but I'm not going to. I want to hear what you have to say about it.
Look, it's, let's take a step back.
That is just that is the complete opposite of everything that I know to be true. I don't even know where to start with that. If you want to stabilize your hormones, then that's the number one reason you should get rid of carbs. Everybody knows that. I don't know. Yeah. Apparently not this person.
Yeah, and yeah, you are 100% accurate. And I'm fussing on my other screen a second, because I want, and I'll talk you through this, but I want to share my screen to show you one of the
super stuff. Yeah. So if you're listening, guys, you might want to jump over to our YouTube channel, or just like vividly imagine in your mind's eye with very, very close detail what Richard Smith is going to be describing here.
Spot on. And I will talk you through this.
In the meantime, I'll go grab my guitar and keep everybody entertained while you're doing
I am nearly there, I promise. Well, there we are. I mean, it just goes to show that this is completely unprompted. Right, let me share this screen there. So you're going to have to give me access in 2 seconds when I share this. But if I open up this window, share that screen. There we are.
Gotcha.
Okay, so this is sugar. It says on it is sugar. And this is also sugar. If we are trying to be fit and healthy, these are things that and I think it's safe to say, even people who consume carbohydrates remove these. They take their sugar out of their tea and coffee. They stop eating candy bars. You're actively trying to reduce your sugar intake. But what many people don't understand is all of these are sugar too. So we've got granola, your Kellogg's cornflakes, your Weetabix,
Particularly the granola is probably the worst of all of them, right?
Exactly. Granola, your oats, your pasta, your rice. All of these are sugar, because what many people don't understand is all carbohydrates break down to sugar.
Right.
And I'll repeat that. All carbohydrates break down into sugar. Carbs is sugar.
Sweet potatoes, pasta, it doesn't matter.
It's all sugar. And I think it's safe to say this, that even within the carb community, the athletes and people there would admit that sweets, are not good for you, yet a bowl of granola they believe to be. It's the same thing. Now, when you look at the back of a label and it says, 80 grams of carbohydrates, of which sugar's 5, we think that it's only the 5 grams of that carbohydrate that sugars. But that's a market employ. It's a market employ which has been introduced by the food industry in order to confuse and manipulate you. Every one of those carbs sugars eventually. That 5 grams is of which sugars immediately, and the rest will store as glycogen, but sugar eventually. It's all sugar. And if we look at...
Hey, Richard, sorry to interrupt you real quick. I got a text message right now from one of my clients, Nathaniel. Bro, did a little experiment adding fruit to my diet, like Saladino's version, but animal-based. Crohn's flare within 4 days, LOL. Back to lion.
Yeah, and do you know, we can...
Sorry, go ahead. It's fruit. It's still sugar.
And I have a fantastic study to show you more about that also now. But all carbs break down into sugar. And this is the process that it goes through. So those black circles on the screen now, for those that are not watching YouTube, are glucose. So the carbohydrates break down into glucose. The glucose is stored in the liver and muscle as glycogen. And then when those stores are full, it overspills and stores as fat. So it's not fat consumption that makes us fat. It's the overconsumption of carbohydrate, i.e. sugar. And this is the process it goes through. When we consume carbohydrate, the pancreas releases insulin, a hormone insulin. Insulin upregulates an enzyme called lipoprotein lipase, which breaks the bonds on the glycerol backbone and sends fatty acids into the fat cell. So this is how we store fat. Insulin tells the body to store fat. Now, for us to burn that fat for fuel, so for us to lose weight, we need another enzyme called hormone-sensitive lipase. Hormone-sensitive lipase within the fat cell will break the bonds on the glycerol backbone and put these fatty acids back into the bloodstream for us to use for energy. The issue with this is insulin blocks hormone-sensitive lipase. It blocks our body's ability to put those fatty acids into the bloodstream. In other words, if you consume oats or granola before going for a run, in an attempt to give you energy to burn fat, you are not burning any fat, regardless of calories, because calories don't really exist.
Wow.
And we can go into this a little bit more, but it's biologically impossible to burn body fat when insulin is elevated. Now, you could be incredibly fit and have incredibly sensitive insulin. Your insulin sensitivity could be high, so you can overcome this quickly. And sometime throughout the run, insulin is suppressed, and then you would begin burning fat. But until that happens, you are not burning any fat. So look, the takeaway from this little bit there is insulin is a storing hormone, and it wants to store fat. So the pure ingestion of carbohydrate is going to tell the body to store fat.
Right.
All carbs is sugar.
Yes, people, what is happening? Hope everybody's good. So, if you're on TikTok, make sure you're following us on our account, Carnivore Coaches Corner. TikTok is flooded with fake coaches that give out horrible advice, shit advice concerning your health. If you don't believe me, get a load of this.
Trying to lose body fat. Stay away from anything that says low fat on it, fat free.
Preach it, brother.
To make it into low fat, they either add something to it or they take something out of it.
For once, Eddie, you're not actually wrong, but you're most definitely still fucking stupid. Because anything low fat or light generally has done what it says on the tin and removed fat. Not because it's bad, but because fats have 9 calories per gram. Therefore, removing the fat reduces calories. And mind-blowing information to everyone here, reducing calories will help you lose fat. And in some instances, improve your health.
If you want to lose weight, start with the fatty red meat first. Water and salt. That's what we are designed to eat. Human beings were designed to eat fat and are very, very good at it. We can digest and metabolize fat better than most animals can. Unfortunately, human beings have a very difficult time, comparatively speaking, with fiber and other plants. So, start with red meat, water, and salt. That's how human beings should lose weight effortlessly in most cases, sustainably and safely.
First sign to stop listening to this cunt should have been when he said,
If you're trying to lose body fat, stay the fuck away from fruit.
I mean, that sounds like good advice to me because most fruit has had so much genetic modification done to it that it has more sugar and much less nutrients than it did when the earth was young.
if you didn't pick up on that red flag, please pick up on this one. Anything low fat or light products are probably going to help you in the long run. The same as following me will. So before you fuck off, make sure you drop me a follow.
For the next 2 months, every time that you're about to say the F word, I want you to eat a piece of steak instead, because you will experience, I promise you, you will actually have some decent muscle mass, you will have less stress, and you'll have more self-respect. Let's go, champ, you got this.
Make sure you give us a follow over there, okay? We also post meal prep videos, workout tips, and tips from top carnivore doctors and nutritionists from across the globe. Now back to the show.
Do you think that's why the carnivore coaches and the carnivore nutritionists and the carnivore doctors of the world, why it's all of us that are the ones that are particularly not a fan of comparatively speaking to other coaches, to not track calories and to not obsess over calories and how a calorie is not a calorie, because every single piece of food that you eat affects your body hormonally. It affects it metabolically. Calories were invented in the 1800s for use to compare fuel efficiency between steam engines, and we're not a closed, controlled environment to where an experiment like that can be done or makes any sense with any remote type of accuracy. And so I think that there's so many hormonal changes that happen for the better once you go carnivore, that's why you see me, like I do the math and I'm like, I'm eating 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day, and like that, like losing weight on that. And a lot of my clients are just eating way more than they should. And so do you think that maybe that has to do with why you see people like Bart K and like you and me and us and Steven and everybody that just aren't a fan of this, and would even go so far as to say that that's damaging and it could come with consequences?
Yeah, for sure. Look, there's so many things that we need to tap into there. And off the back of what you just said, I'm going to share my screen again now. But before I do, you're 100% right. A calorie doesn't really exist in the context that we believe it to be. And I'll explain why, but just to touch base on what you said, Bart K, a friend of ours, an incredible scientist and professor,
yes,
has illustrated countless amount of times that the way that a calorie is measured is that they put a piece of food into something called a bomb calorimeter and they incinerate it and they measure off the protons which are projected into a pool of water. The photons, apologies, which is heat. But photons don't weigh anything. Photons do not have any mass. So how can something that has no mass, gain any weight? Now, when it comes to calories, it's the only metric that we understand. So I get why people will use them, but a calorie is not a calorie. And the reason being, and in fact, let me share this. And I'm aware we're going off kilter, but I think this is going to be worth it.
Our listeners are used to it.
They certainly are. So look, when we look at weight gain, there are two theories: the caloric model and the endocrine theory, hormones. The caloric or calories in, calories out model is the one that predominates. This is the one everyone believes. Track your calories. Right. I don't track calories. And the reason being is it's not calories. It's the hormones that govern whether we gain or lose weight. Energy needs to be accounted for. And I use the term energy because, again, a calorie is not a calorie. And it's not the calories that govern whether we gain or lose weight. And the reason being, the caloric model is highly flawed. It doesn't account for many things, including these 5 things. It doesn't account for the effect of insulin, which I've just shown you. It doesn't account for the thermic effect of food, which we can go into, metabolic rate, ketogenesis, inflammation, and something else that isn't on there, which comes along with insulin, is the effect of incretins and lectins. And the reason being, and I'm going to move this along a little bit because I want to show you something. Grains, things like bread, pasta, rice, granola, oats, they contain a compound called lectins. It's a carbohydrate binding protein. And what happens within the body is that this study illustrates how much fat is stored when we elicit an insulin response. So the basal measurement there is how much fat that response of insulin is elicited and has told the body to store. At the top, or second from the top, we have WGA, wheat germ agglutinin. And I'm looking over there because it's on my other screen.
Is this the lectins in and of themselves that are directly causing the fat gain, or is this indirectly causing? It sounds like it might be like a trigger for cortisol or something.
So this is the effect of lectins and the effect of the combined effect of lectins and insulin. So this doesn't account for cortisol. So if we look at WGA, that's how much fat the body stores from the activation of insulin when we eat a food that contains carbohydrate, has the effect on insulin and lectins. Right at the top, sorry. So the top line is the combined fat storage effect. So to put this into perspective, if you were to consume a breakfast, or call it meal one, because I generally don't eat breakfast, let's call meal one.
Yeah.
Bacon and eggs that contain, say, 500 calories. Or I was to consume a bowl of muesli that contained 500 calories. That bowl of muesli is going to tell my body to store 5 times more fat than the bacon and eggs because of this combined insulin and lectin, or wheat germ agglutinin effect on fat storage. So these lectins cause 5 times more fat storage than the effect of insulin itself. The other thing they do is that they block leptin. Leptin is a satiety hormone. It tells us when we're full. Lectins block leptin. So if we consume foods that contain lectins, and the analogy that I quite often use is I used to love fast food. When I used to go to a fast food restaurant, I would stuff my face and I would feel full. 20 minutes later, I could go back and do it all again. And that's because of the lectins and the emulsifiers found within those foods, but the lectins especially. So that's the effect that lectins have on the body. Now, there's another issue, is vegetable oils. And again, this is all circulated around insulin. Vegetable seed oils. They don't come from vegetables, they come from seeds. And to extract the oil from the seed, we need to treat it with toxic chemicals like hexane, which is a known carcinogen to humans. And then we need to bleach it with hair dye, peroxide, in order to give it that golden glow. And then we cook our food in this. These compounds are known carcinogens, yet we cook our food. You can run a diesel car on these compounds. Would you cook your food in diesel? And the simple answer is no. So why are we cooking in these compounds? And here's another study that I've referenced. The reference is on the bottom of that slide. These compounds contain an oxidized omega-6, which causes inflammation, damages the liver, and it leads to insulin resistance. All of these factors are telling your body to store fat and affecting your hormones, which comes back to the point I made in the very first statement, that this is an endocrine problem, not a calorie problem. And then, as this study references, a high omega-6 intake is associated with weight gain in both animal and human studies. And omega-3s do not tell the body to store fat. Saturated fats do not tell the body to store fat. These oxidized omega-6s tell the body to store fat. These vegetable oils that we cook in, that we believe are heart healthy, tell the body to store fat. Now, the issue is almost everything in the supermarket contains these toxic compounds. Biscuits, cakes, crisps, chips, all of these things contain this toxic compound, which is telling the body to store fat, leading to insulin resistance, damaging the gut, causing oxidative stress and electrophilic stress, which is damaging the body and is causing the body to waste its life, in effect. And I'm going off kilter with this a little bit, but I think it's worth expressing. But in order for us to process one glucose molecule, it costs the body 4 NAD plus molecules. So part of the electron transport chain is the conversion of a compound called NAD plus into NADH. In order to process one glucose molecule, it costs the body 4 NAD plus. Now, we have a limited supply of this compound within the body. Once it's gone, life ends. So it's critical for life. Yeah. Every time we eat or process one glucose molecule, it costs the body 4 of these NAD plus. When we process beta-hydroxybutyrate, it costs the body 1, making ketone production and utilization 400% more efficient, 4 times less oxidative damage to the cells. Now, really quickly, oxidative stress is when we remove an electron, and it causes that compound to start spinning out of control, almost in the way that a wheel would if a ball bearing was missing. And then it borrows from another cell and from another, and so on and so forth. And it basically spreads this stress throughout the body, causing this oxidative stress. And this is one of the main causes and causes of things like cancer, for example. Another one is something called electrophilic stress, which I won't go into too much detail now. But these things cost the body. They reduce human life. So we want to reduce oxidative stress and electrophilic stress. These seed oils and excess carbohydrates cause these problems. So coming back to the point I made in the very first instance, I'm not against carbohydrate, but many people don't understand these things. They don't understand that it has a massive impact on insulin. They don't understand that it prevents the body from burning fat, and they don't understand that the overconsumption can lead to oxidative and electrophilic stress, damaging the body, reducing lifespan, and basically hindering all aspects of your life, including athletic performance. Now, I wonder if, in fact, let's go through this as well. So, I mean, let's take a look at this, and all of this is going to come into the questions that you've just put forward. So, lectins that we consume in nature, or the foods that contain the lectins, generally contain another compound called phytic acid. Or phytates. Lots of vegetables and things like potatoes, nuts and seeds and things contain these phytic acids or phytates. Phytic acid blocks the absorption of zinc, iron and magnesium by as much as 100%. Zinc is essential for the production of testosterone, which we need for athletic performance. We need for health and well-being. Even women need testosterone. All estrogen was once testosterone, so we need testosterone. We need zinc. Zinc is essential. It's essential for the production of neurotransmitters, methylation, and lots of other things in the body. Iron is important for supplying oxygen to the muscle with aiding, building, and repairing. And magnesium is crucial for supporting the muscle and energy production. So these things are essential. So in other words, if you are to consume a compound that contains lectins or phytic acid with a food, i.e. a piece of steak or chicken breast, which is highly nutrient dense, those anti-nutrients are enough to block the absorption of those amino acids and essential nutrients by as much as 100%. So when people say you need to eat a balanced meal, a balanced lifestyle, this is inaccurate, because if you were consuming a bowl of pasta with your steak, those lectins and phytic acids are enough to block that absorption by as much as 100%. Absolutely counterintuitive for health and well-being. Absolutely counterintuitive for athletic performance.
Yeah, we're just talking on our I think like 2 episodes ago. Mark and I we totally debunked my vitamin D deficiency. I was deficient in vitamin D forever. It didn't matter how much I was supplementing. I was supplementing like it was going out of style, and like trying to eat everything that I could find that had vitamin D in it. And then it wasn't until I went carnivore, cut out fiber, and cut out all the plants that I was eating that had vitamin D in them, or at least people said they did. I cut those out, and now I don't have to supplement it anymore near as much as I did before. My vitamin D levels are way better. I think it was the fiber. I think it was the phytic acid. I think it was the lectins that were taking more of those nutrients than what they were giving me.
Yeah, and 100%. It's these compounds, believe it or not, are anti-nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
Plants and vegetables and fruits, they are not the magic elixir of vitamins and minerals that we have been led to believe.
No, they're living organisms, and they have an agenda. And if you eat them, that messes up their agenda. It's a conflict of interest.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how they survive. Like it's just common sense.
Yeah, exactly. They're toxic chemicals, phytoalexins, plant toxins, defense chemicals. A plant does not want to be eaten,
right?
And it will do anything it can to defend itself. And in fact, I'm going to carry on with a couple of these other slides just for 2 seconds. Now, this is my interpretation of the microvilli that lines the gut. Now, the microvilli are like little fingers that the nutrients bind to, and this is how we absorb our vitamins and minerals and all our nutrients. And this is what lectins do. Lectins, wheat germ agglutinin, and in plants, there's another lectin called phytohemagglutinin. It's particularly high in things like bell peppers, tomatoes, onions, to name a few. They bind to the surface area on the microvilli line in the gut, and they prevent the absorption of other nutrients. So again,
I'm sorry, tomato. I've heard that my entire life, but I've never actually heard somebody say tomato until now. Sorry.
we'll go with tomato. I did the conversion of chocolate bar into candy bar for you earlier as well, if you didn't notice.
yeah, thank you for that.
But these compounds, they're not the magic elixir. And it gets even worse. Look, so this is the epithelial cells that line our gut. So for the viewers who are listening and can't see, there's an image on the screen which basically shows a block of cells. The epithelial cells that line our gut are our body's line of defense against external toxins, and they are 1 cell thick. So they've got an incredibly big job for something that's very small. And what happens is when we consume foods that contain lectins, like bread, pasta, rice, for example, and other vegetables, to name a few, they bind to the receptor sites on the epithelial cells lining the gut. They cause the release of a molecule called zonulin, and zonulin release causes a gap in the tight junction between these epithelial cells that line the gut. This allows undigested protein molecules to travel into the bloodstream where they shouldn't be. So the body creates antibodies to fight them. And then through a process called molecular mimicry, the body starts attacking other proteins in the body that look the same. This is the root cause of every autoimmune disease that you know of. Lectins is one of the biggest contributing factors. There are other contributing factors: alcohol, casein, and, as I say, phytohemagglutinin in plants, environmental toxins, etc. But alcohol in particular is incredibly high at doing so. And lectins, particularly wheat germ agglutinin from bread, pasta, rice, damages heavily the gut lining and leads to autoimmune disease. And this happens with everyone. How can these compounds that contain carbohydrate be healthy and good for us if, one, they are blocking the absorption of these nutrients, including our ability to produce hormones? Hormones need saturated fats. All hormones need saturated fats in order to be created. When we consume carbohydrate, we are devoid of saturated fats generally, because this is what that community tends to do. They avoid the fats and they eat lots of carbohydrate, which is damaging their gut, leading to this intestinal permeability and blocking their body's ability in order to absorb these nutrients. There's so much more we can go into. I mean, this is an image there that I was saying earlier in regards to cellular respiration and how the body reduces that NAD plus into NADH. And, there's studies here that I just think I'd reference that, lower levels lead to fatigue, weight gain, and metabolic syndrome. And that's what those highlight studies. And this is the study that highlights the 2 NAD plus molecules there, the 2 NAD there that produce glucose, whereas 1 is created in order to process beta hydroxybutyrate. I'm going to stop sharing there so we can talk a little bit more, but it's a complete fallacy that these compounds that we are told, we need to consume are good for us when they cause so many issues within the body. Now, if we look at carbohydrate from what we are told to be a healthy perspective, bread, pasta, rice, maybe not so much the bread, but pasta and rice. But these compounds, these foods generally contain high levels of phytic acid and lectins. So the argument would be, well, what if we get them from fruits? Fruit contains fructose. Now, even grains contain fructose. They contain fructans, which break down into fructose. And as a segue, just going off kilter with this a little bit, these grains are treated with toxic chemicals, herbicides called glyphosate. Glyphosate blocks a pathway called the shikimate pathway. The shikimate pathway is responsible for creating our neurotransmitters, which we need for life. 95% of our neurotransmitters are made in the gut. This glyphosate blocks the very first step in the shikimate pathway and inhibits our body's ability to create neurotransmitters. And it also prevents the breakdown of fructose. So this glyphosate blocks or prevents fructose malabsorption, which is one of the main reasons that people suffer with IBS. So if you suffer with IBS, it's usually to do with either lectins or too much fructose consumption from grains, or too much fiber consumption from plants, because all of these plants are sprayed with this glyphosate. And again, this glyphosate blocks the body's ability to break down fructose, and it builds up in the lower gut, leads to fatty liver disease and elevated glucose, which leads to all sorts of issues within the body. So these foods are just not good for us. So there's another example there why vegetables and grains are not good. And I've probably gone off track a little bit there now, but it's reel me back in. What have I done?
No, you're good, man. Bro, everything that you just presented, thank you for that, man. Like you see, you're able to take things that like can kind of bog me down and go over my head when we start getting into these technical terms. And so for you to be able to break it down and simplify like that, it's just it helps me to understand it a little bit better, man. Because it's taken me over a year to just wrap my head around this. Yeah. And it all started when Bart K was on my show, and when he basically debunked calories like to my face. And then I was just thinking through the back of my head and everything that I had learned over the last year of coaching myself through 4 bodybuilding shows on the carnivore diet, and doing that with and using basically that same model to train most of everybody else that I was training. I was just like, yeah, everything you're saying makes sense. I've seen it. This does not add up. And so I was just like, we're done tracking calories. And so really, I was just worried that all my clients would be upset about it, and that they would, because they want to know. And for a lot of people, it's really important to them. It's just like they just feel better knowing that they're consuming a certain amount of calories, and that it's the magic number that's going to help them lose weight. And I think you just got to get rid of that mentality. And so I had a heart-to-heart with everybody. I was like, look, I'm not telling you how many calories you're eating. You're eating what you're eating, what's on your meal plan. That's what you're eating.
Yeah.
And if you're on like a hard cutting goal, then you got to stick to it. You got to stick exactly to the weights that I'm telling you to eat, because I know that's what's going to get you from point A to point B. But if that's not the case, then you have to know when to eat a little bit more or a little bit less, and that only comes with trial and error.
Yeah, 100%. And look, it's the reason that the caloric model doesn't work is because of all the things that we've just mentioned in regards to the effect on the endocrine system. The thermic effect of food is another one. Protein takes 25 to 35% of its calories or energy just to process that protein. So out of every 500 calories, 100 is spent just processing. All of these factors have a massive impact on what happens within the body. But what you can do is, I don't track calories, but for people who macros is something I would suggest to track over anything else.
Oh yeah.
But what I would say is that the difference between coming from a high carb lifestyle to an animal based lifestyle is that all of those effects on insulin, the lectins, the incretin effect, thermic effect of food, all of these other things, you can't compare one to the other. But what you can do is, if you eat the same food every day, then your body will treat the energy, let's not use the term calories, but the lever to pull there, if you wanted to lose a little bit of weight, then would be to reduce the fat. So without tracking the energy value, if you eat the same food every day and you're not losing any weight, there's a few levers to pull. You can reduce the fat, or you can have lower and higher fat days. You could look, if we look at the fat, for example, we can burn dietary fat or body fat. If we want to ramp up the dietary body fat oxidation, then we can reduce dietary fat. So that is a lever to pull. But we must also remember that fat is essential for life. We can't live without it. So it is essential.
Yeah, my approach, like my knee-jerk reaction when it comes to cutting is like, if somebody's already fat adapted, they're already carnivore, they kind of have everything going for them. It's just like I actually like to drop the protein and keep the fat high, and see how low we can get the protein, because it just lowers their overall insulin throughout the day. I find that gets a lot of people a lot further, but it's dependent on the person though. Like some people, you do that and then they start getting diarrhea because they're just not used to that much fat. Like, oh crap, okay, no, let's do more like how Richard would do it,
Yeah. So look, as you say, there's more than one way that you can approach this, but It's certainly a calorie is not a calorie. And I think, you know, we could do a full, you know, a 2 hour, 3 hour podcast just on this alone. But I know there's other speaking points, but I think we've debunked that caloric model comfortably with what we've shown there.
100%.
And I've just shared my screen again. And the reason that I've shared this is that when you look at carbohydrate from natural sources, generally honey is regarded as being one of the healthiest sources. It's one of the most natural sources that exist on the planet because it's been around for millions and millions of years.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, until I read a little bit more in Dr. Anthony Chaffee's book, and I have a feeling I know where you're going with this. Go ahead.
Quite possibly. So Dr. Chaffee and I did a rebuttal to Dr. McCullough and Georgie Dinkoff last year. So they published a report which says that long-term.
Is this the report that we're looking at right now?
Yes. So this is it. Yeah. So what they said was that long-term low-carb ketogenic lifestyles are detrimental to their health. They mentioned that it has a negative impact on hormones, particularly cortisol, which is something we'll go into now. And another thing that they mentioned was that honey improves diabetes and does not affect the body the way that sugar does. And they are two different compounds. They are one and the same. And this is what this paper highlights. So basically, and I'm going to read this out, the present work indicated that the consumption of 50 grams per day of honey worsened glycemic control. And it goes on to say that in agreement with us, the most popular study, Barami et al. Reported deterioration of glycemic control following the ingestion of high and incremental doses of honey from 1 gram per kilogram per day to 2.5 grams per kilogram. However, in other investigations by Rats et al., honey consumption for 2 weeks had no effect on serum glucose in comparison with sucrose or high fructose corn syrup. The discrepancy in the results of Rats et al. With ours and Barami et al. Studies could be due to the control conditions. While Rats et al. Compared honey with sucrose and high fructose corn syrup, we and Barami compared honey with no honey. In other words, honey could confer a benefit compared to processed sugars. But if you are healthy and you do not consume any sugar, honey has a detrimental impact on glycemic control. And it goes on to say that honey...
I want to add to that too. I think I heard that it has... I read that it has more fructose than high fructose corn syrup does.
Yeah, spot on. In fact, honey contains approximately 80% carbohydrates, with fructose and glucose being the most abundant. Yep. The co-ingestion of glucose and fructose increases something called the polyol pathway, which has increases the ingestion of the fructose itself, which leads to fatty liver and insulin resistance. And it even says, however, honey also contains high amounts of glucose, which has high glycemic index, and so on and so forth. So that study just rips apart basically what people will say in regards to honey consumption. It's still sugar. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It is still sugar. And there's the reason that those guys published that in regards to McCullough and Georgie Dinkoff was they were trying to show that, and I'm going to share my screen again. They were trying to show that when we consumed fructose soft drinks from natural sources, that it had no impact on insulin levels and so on and so forth. But this is the study that they referenced. And what they did here was that they split Worcester rats into groups, and the rats were divided into 3 groups and allowed to consume water, light Coca-Cola, or regular Coca-Cola. And the R group presented significantly higher daily intake and significantly lower food intake than C groups relative to C and L. R showed higher triglyceride concentrations in serum, liver, and so on. Basically, what this study shows is that Georgie Dinkoff went on to say that the rats were consuming the equivalent of 8,000 calories per day and did not gain any weight. And this was proof that natural fructose consumption from Mexican Coke, I believe it was Mexican Coke, is actually good for you and not detrimental. But you can see from the conclusion based on the results, it can be concluded that the daily ingestion of large amounts of fructose-rich soft drinks resulted in unfavorable alterations to the lipid profile. The group consuming the regular Coca-Cola showed higher triglyceride concentrations in the serum and liver. So even though, these people, these rats were consuming 8,000 calorie equivalent per day and did not gain any weight, it had a detrimental impact on their cholesterol levels, on the triglyceride levels. So when we have people saying from the carbohydrate perspective, carbs don't make you gain weight, and they show these studies, what we must remember is these compounds are also high in caffeine, and caffeine increases metabolic rate. This increase in metabolic rate is enough to offset any energy value that would be in there. But also, it's pertinent to remember that caffeine has detrimental impacts on cortisol. It damages the adrenals, increases cortisol, which increases insulin. So I just wanted to basically those two parts there, those 2 points reinforce the fact it doesn't matter how natural the sugar is, it has a detrimental overconsumption, has a detrimental impact on health and well-being. And coming back to the hormones. So I've got some other bits to show into this as well now. I've been ketogenic and carnivore for 10, 11 years. So coming back to the point you made in regards to hormones, what Georgie Dinkoff and Dr. McCullough, and this podcast is available on my channel and Dr. Chafee's fantastic podcast, incredible if you guys want to jump over and take a look at that. It's a 2-hour podcast, and we completely debunked Dr. McCullough and Georgie Dinkoff. But what I've shared there now is basically the correlation between cortisol and CRP. So this study shows that when CRP is elevated, cortisol and so on and so forth. So one of the points that they made is that long-term low carbohydrate lifestyles damage the adrenals and cause issues with cortisol. So I've never tested my cortisol, and the reason being is cortisol tests are not really reliable, because when they do a test, you would have to be tested several times throughout the day and constantly throughout the day, because times of day are going to have different impacts. Whether you've just eaten, whether you've just woken up, whether you've just had sex, so on and so forth. So testing cortisol is not as easy as it would sound. But looking at this study, we can do it by CRP. Now, my CRP is incredibly low, and I've been ketogenic and carnivore for 10, 11 years. Now, that's one point. So my cortisol is incredibly low. And another thing that I wanted to mention as well, and I'm going to share again this screen just to show, and I'll talk the guys through this also, is something else in regards to DHA. So there is a correlation. For those of you who don't understand DHA, DHA almost works in opposite to cortisol, as this study references. So studies indicate the high DHA cortisol ratio, meaning higher DHA levels than cortisol, may reduce the negative impacts of stress. By comparison, subjects with a low DHA to cortisol ratio were more vulnerable to symptoms of stress. This included dissociation and reduced cognitive performance. So if cortisol is elevated, DHA is low. Now, I've never tested my cortisol, but I do test my DHA. It's something you can get tested through a standard blood test panel. My DHA is incredibly high. And again, I have lived the ketogenic, low-carb, carnivore lifestyle for 10, 11 years. So from a hormonal perspective, these things have not negatively impacted me. The studies that say that long-term low-carb diets do are based on a number of factors. One, they're not long enough. Two, they don't account for, if somebody begins a low-carb, ketogenic, carnivore lifestyle, they tend to drink a lot of coffee. We gravitate in, and I did when I started this keto lifestyle. Fat coffees, bulletproof coffees. I have coffee all the time with fat and MCT, and that's fantastic. That's great.
I was doing the same thing for quite a while, actually. And there's a lot of my clients that that's in their plan. It's probably never going to go out of their plan, and it never really has to. Hey, podcast listeners, hope you're enjoying the show. Real quick, if you've never spoken with Coach Mark Ennis, what are you waiting for? He has changed my life personally, as well as coaches some of my closest family members. Check out what these three ladies have to say about their experience working with him.
Hi, my name is Louise. I'm a client of Mark's. I've been with Mark a good while now. I want to look leaner, I want to look better, healthier. If I didn't have those check-ins with Mark, I'd be in a dark place. He is the person I tell everything to, because he is the person that's going to get me to where I want to be.
I came to Mark unhappy with my bone density and body composition. Not only am I turning my life around, I'm actually now a better example for my daughters, for their futures. I look forward to continuing to work with Mark to keep getting stronger and leaner. So thank you very, very much, Mark.
Hi, I started with Mark last April. At the time, I was stuck in a bit of a rut. I was eating heavily during the week and then binging at the weekend on wine and snacks and things like that. After meeting Mark, he explained to me exactly what I was doing wrong and why I wasn't losing weight. The fact that I was also menopausal wasn't helping the matter. So he set about setting up a plan that suited my needs. And from day one, I haven't looked back. I've lost all the weight that I wanted to lose. I exercised every day, walking and weights, but once or twice I had injuries with the weights and Mark just changed the plan up. I was always one that was mad into carbs. I would never have thought that I could give up carbs, but from listening to Mark and trusting him and following his plan and not having to think too much for myself because Mark does that for me, I was able to follow it.
So there you go. The easiest way to contact Mark is through Instagram. He is at fitnessbeyondtime01, and he is not your typical Instagram influencer, by the way. All of his followers are his present and past clients. Follow his page and you will find nothing but quality educational content and testimonial after testimonial from people like you, just like the ones that you heard. No Instagram? No problem. Your life is probably better off without it. In that case, you can email ennismark93@gmail.com. There is one S, that is ENNISMARK93@gmail.com. Just tell him what your goal is and he'll definitely take it from there. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, and that's fine. I still drink coffee. I still drink MCT. I produce MCT. I think it's fantastic. Yep. But when we gravitate into this lifestyle, we tend to overconsume coffee. The caffeine in coffee has a negative impact on the glutamate to GABA ratio. It leads to depression, anxiety. It also it damages the adrenals and can cause an increase in cortisol. So these studies that suggest that are not accounting for the increase in coffee consumption. And there is, have I got the study here? Yes, I have. Here it is. So look, this, I'm going to share this one as well. Sorry, it's loads of screen share. And again, I'll talk the listeners through. So this was a study that examined body composition after carbohydrate restricted diet and basically reported enhanced fat loss, prevention of lean body mass. So basically, let's see if we can find it. So where is it? Total and regional body composition and fasting samples were assessed. Fat mass was significantly decreased. Lean body mass significantly increased. There was a significant decrease in serum insulin, an increase in thyroxine. So when people say going low carb affects your hormones, an increase in thyroxine, which is T4, which we need to create T3. And where it goes on to say, where are we? There was no significant changes in glucagon, total free testosterone. So no changes in glucagon, total free testosterone, sex hormone binding globulin, IGF-1, cortisol, no changing in cortisol, or T3. This study shows that there is no negative impact of long-term low carbohydrate ketogenic lifestyles. So all of these studies that people will reference and say that low carb causes thyroid problems, it's utter rubbish. The evidence is out there and it is there to see, plain and simply. And, you know, we've got so much that we could go through, but I know, look, I think we've just taken like the better part of half an hour to address one question, but I'm hoping that we've answered maybe some of the bits in the other questions there, but
I think so. Yeah, I think so. The next one is Haley's comment, Haley's.comment 710. Carbs aren't for building muscles. Carbs are for energy, so for the workouts. Do not let anyone scare you out of eating carbs.
So let's look at that. carbohydrates for energy. Yes, they produce energy. Fat also produces energy. But so we're talking from a bodybuilding perspective now. Well,
Right.
So what are we talking? We're talking hitting the gym, lifting heavy weights.
Mhm.
So we don't use glycolysis to lift heavy weights. For the heavy reps, the heavy weights, the weight training, we use the PC system.
And your creatine phosphate system.
The creatine phosphate system, which doesn't involve carbohydrate. So any potential, I'm going to share this again because this, and apologies, it's
No problem.
I'm going to share.
I was waiting for you to tell me what the CP system was, and then like I don't know. I guess I didn't really think of it as being CP because you think of the F sound, and so I didn't get that until like 10 seconds later. We call it the creatine phosphate system.
Spot on, yeah, creatine phosphate, PC or CP. So, and yeah, look, I'm gonna show these. And we'll talk a little bit about them. I won't bore you too much with it, but it's let's share this window. And I know we're not boring the guys, but
this is not boring. This is infuriating, man. Because how are people aware of this and still preach that you need carbs and still think that you're okay? Sorry, go ahead.
So look, so we've just addressed the PC system or CP system, phosphocreatine, creatine phosphate. This is what we need for the explosive movements. Now, for us to use the glycolytic energy system, that kicks in sort of 30 seconds after. So this is like, longer intensity stuff. And then we come into fat burning, which is where the ketones really, really thrive, or fat burning. The glycolytic energy system, which is used by, we use glucose, which primarily comes from glycogen. So this study highlights the fact, and this study, that basically, as a fat-adapted athlete, we still produce glycogen. We still store glycogen to equal amounts, if not higher, than a carbohydrate athlete. The lactic acid system becomes upregulated, and the body has the ability to send lactate in the muscle to the liver, which it converts into glycogen and sends it back to the muscle at a higher rate than it would if we were consuming carbohydrate. And these studies, one group consumed high carbohydrate drinks, and the other group was like high fat shakes or something. They measured by muscle biopsy the glycogen stores before, during, and after an event, and they showed that the ketogenic adapted athletes had equal, if not higher, amounts of glycogen in their muscles. So the PC system, CP system, we get that from meat and from creatine monohydrate if we want to supplement. That does not come from carbs. The fat burning system, where we burn body fat for long intensity stuff, which is where keto really thrives, that box is ticked. Boom.
Yeah.
The weights in the gym, we can still lift these weights. We can still tap into the PC system and the glycolytic energy system when we are fat adapted, ketogenic, and carnivore. There are no carbs required. And this study, look, despite a significant fat loss, the athletes did not lose muscle strength or power. Keto diet does not affect strength performance in elite artistic gymnasts. And we go on with this one, in regards to building muscle without carbs. Now, I know that wasn't mentioned in the thing, but that's another common thing when it comes to lifting weights. Carbohydrate does not augment further muscle protein synthesis if adequate protein is consumed. So this study investigated whether muscle protein synthesis was higher with a co-ingestion of carb with protein against protein alone, and the results found that the effect of the insulin from consuming carbohydrates alone with protein did not improve muscle protein synthesis. Carbs are not required to build muscle, and this is what this study also echoed. The muscle.
I just wanted to add one thing to that. When it comes to building muscle with or without carbs, just my personal experience, I know there's a lot of other keto coaches that have a completely different approach that coach up. I know professional keto bodybuilders that put carbs in workout plans, in meal plans for specific reasons. I personally don't, because I find it just personally so much better to build muscle and so much easier to build muscle without carbs, specifically because of all the other bull crap that comes along with it. The inflammation, it affects my sleep. I don't have the mental clarity that I want to be able to do the rest of the stuff like that has nothing to do with bodybuilding, like check-ins with my clients, like living my best life. I mean, carbs overall, just generally speaking, for me, they devalue all that. I can live a better life, feeling better, thinking better, performing better in the gym with no carbs whatsoever. Whenever I start to reintroduce my carbs into my diet, just like Nate texting me earlier, and this has been my experience. This has been what I've seen work for all my clients, is that just keeping them out, you can't go wrong with it. And so even bulking, like bulking on the Lion diet, I think that the Lion diet is a great way to bulk, because what's the difference between that and then putting carbs into your plan, and now you're gaining a lot of water weight? Okay, maybe it helps you, even if it does help you with your strength or with your power to some degree, and even if it does help you get faster results, then you're just setting yourself up for injury. Like the more inflammation you have, the more the faster something's gonna snap. But I've gone through, but I had, let's see, I tore my groin this year. That's like, I mean, the year before that, all my injuries were worse. This is the least amount of injuries I've had in a long time in my bodybuilding career. And I tore my groin playing hockey. It wasn't even bodybuilding.
Yeah. You're 100% spot on. I mean, let's break that down really quickly. So we think carbs build muscle, but they don't. These studies have shown that they don't. It's insulin that elicits that response, but there's a sweet spot. And the over elicitation of insulin can have negative effects on hormone production. There's a sweet spot. The amino acid leucine elicits that mTOR reaction, which allows us to build muscle at the sweet spot. Mm-hmm. More insulin does not mean more muscle growth. And it's as simple as that. That's why adequate protein is enough. And as you rightly say, when we're living a ketogenic carnivore lifestyle, what does increase muscle protein synthesis is the co-ingestion of protein with fat, because amino acids need fats to be assimilated and absorbed. And again, as you rightly say, the co-ingestion of carbohydrates usually comes along with lots of anti-nutrients, phytic acid and lectins, which are blocking the absorption of those amino acids. So putting carbs in to build muscle is absolutely counterintuitive. It may give the impression that you're building more muscle, but all that is doing is adding water weight and telling your body to store fat, which means you're going to become fluffy during a bulking phase. And when it comes to cutting, you've got to do a 3 to 6 month cut. I used to cut for my comps in as little as 5 weeks, and I would strip and rip up and on zero cardio, might I add. I wouldn't do any cardio ever, and I got to 2% body fat through diet and lifestyle. So
yeah, Nate, that guy that just texted the guy that just texted me earlier, when he did his show a few months ago, he was the leanest person by far on stage. He got second place, which in my opinion he should have got first place, but that's a conversation for a different day. It was a split judging decision, so he should be a pro bodybuilder right now. But he was by far the leanest guy on the stage. He did not do one step of cardio his entire prep. His diet did absolutely everything for him. That's why he was able to hold on to his mass so well, because he didn't waste it on the stair mill.
Yeah, and I agree. It's the training cardio mixed with weight training sends two different signals to the body. So what you don't want to do is mix weight training and then cardio. If you are going to put cardio in, you need to do them on separate times of the day or do them on separate days. But again, look, that's a talk for another day. But carbs do not build muscle. And we've just shown by those studies that we do not need glucose for the glycolytic energy system. So we don't need carbs for anything. The only thing that comes with these carbs is a whole host of downstream deleterious effects in regards to inflammation, cortisol, insulin responses, which have negative impact on the body, anti-nutrients, which prevent the body from absorbing the nutrients that we need in order to build the muscle. It's just absolutely counterintuitive. And I'll show you this as well, because I think this is incredibly important. These vegetables and things that we would consume that we think contain very good, high quality nutrients, they're devoid of nutrients. Plants and fruits do not contain, they're not highly nutrient dense. Now what this graph or this infograph shows is blueberries and kale versus animal proteins. And what we can see instantly looking is that all of those vitamins and minerals are in much higher quantity on the right-hand side of that line. and we are heavily devoid on the left. And what this study looks at is per 100 grams. But 100 grams of kale is an awful lot of kale. You wouldn't eat 100 grams of beef. If we eat as nature intended, we'd be eating 300, 400, 500 grams of beef. So the numbers on the right, we could probably comfortably multiply by 5. But still, let's look at what is found in the vegetables that, you know, a standard bodybuilder may consume in regards to broccoli and spinach and kale and all these sorts of things. Vitamin A doesn't exist in plants. There's no vitamin A in plants. Plants contain beta-carotene, which is a precursor that needs to be acted upon by an enzyme called BCMO in order to create retinol. Plants do not contain vitamin A. Incredibly low in B vitamins. In fact, vitamin B12, which is essential for...
That is just false advertising on so many levels when you hear that there is vitamin A in these products, in these plants.
Yep. 100%. So beta-carotene is not vitamin A. It's one part of vitamin A. And it needs to be converted. And in order to do so, it's depleted by 21 times. Plants do not contain vitamin A. They're incredibly low in B vitamins, particularly B12, which is essential for the production of our neurotransmitters. It's essential for methylation. These are things that we can't live without. We need neurotransmitters and we need to be able to methylate. Vitamin B12 not found in plants at all whatsoever. Iron also not found in plants. Popeye was wrong. There's no iron in spinach. Vitamin C is found in animal proteins. Vitamin D cannot be found in plants.
Maybe if there was, his biceps would have been not proportionately smaller than his forearms. I'm sorry.
Spot on. You know, and then we've got vitamin K. There is no vitamin K in plants. Even kale, which is sold on the premise of being a good source of vitamin K.
That's the whole reason I was eating kale back when I was on the paleo diet.
Yeah, and it's false advertising. Kale contains vitamin K1. The human body needs vitamin K2. And so basically we take the plant form of K, which is phylaquinone, and we need to create it into menaquinone, and it's depleted again, and close to 0 is converted. So K1 is not K2. And there's different types of K2 as well. So I can't remember. Maybe broccoli, for example, contains K2, but that contains MK7. And we need K2, MK4. So it goes deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. But the long and the short is the plants do not contain these vitamins and minerals. They do not contain creatine, choline, carnitine, carnosine, all of these things which are essential for life and so on and so forth. So nothing comes from plants. Everything, all of the nutrients that we need comes from animal proteins. Plants contain lots of phytoalexins, anti-nutrients, negatively affects our hormones. Carbs, again, we're not demonizing carbs, but there is no upside. There is no upside to consuming carbs. When I work with pro athletes, they come to me, they work towards becoming dual fueled. That's the big term going around at the moment. I want to be dual fueled. So I work with them 4 weeks, and I tell them from the beginning, it can take up to 12 months for your body to completely adapt. These processes begin upregulating immediately, but it takes time to adapt. So 6 to 12 months, it seems to be the typical sort of, you can do it in 3 months, but we can go into more detail on another day. But 4 weeks in, they are saying to me and asking, when can I start putting carbs back in? When can I be dual fueled? And in that second, I know that they're not going to stick to it, because carbohydrate is sugar. Sugar is a drug, and sugar is more addictive than heroin. And we've seen this in mice and rat studies. Sugar is addictive. When someone asks that is someone with a drug problem who cannot give up their drug and wants it back in. And in that second, I know that athlete is going to throw the towel in. This is the reason that these people are coming on to the social networks and demonizing people who are living our lifestyle, because they are drug addicts. They are addicted to sugar and they cannot give up their drug of choice. You ask them to give up bread, pasta, rice, it puts the fear of God into their eyes.
I think, that's why they get so mad too, because I'm like, there is energy behind these. It's like, we don't have time to pick apart this one, and I don't even want to. I mean, it's demonizing carb. This is I am Christine _boom. All capital letters. Demonizing carbohydrates is setting back so many people focusing on eating whole food and whole grain carbohydrates, and eat your macros in a balance that works for you, and we will all be fine. Even a ketogenic diet has a small percentage of carbohydrates in it. It's a macronutrient for a reason. Yeah, I mean, my answer to that is doing the horse you rode in on. That's my answer to that.
Yeah, look, and spot on. But we've just addressed all of those points. Carbohydrates are not essential.
Seriously.
The body does not need it. We did not consume any carbohydrate during the Ice Age, and yet we are a species that is thriving. We are carnivores. There is no nutrients in plants. We do not need carbs for anything in the body whatsoever. There is not one process in the body that needs exogenous carbohydrate. Plants are nothing more than survival foods. They are not thriving foods. And the people who say this, as you say, that energy comes from a point of drug addiction, because you were telling them to give up something that they are addicted to. I'm
not even telling you to give it up. There's things in my life that probably don't serve me that I'm addicted to. I'm drinking ESP right now. That's a pre-workout. You know, it's got some stimulants in it that I know mess up my sleep, but I don't know, man. I think that my overall quality of life is just fine with it right now. I'm gonna have to cut it out for the lion diet, and so just a few more weeks on it. But I mean, if carbohydrates is something that you seriously want in your diet, then by all means go for it. But the reason that we recommend that not to is because we care about you, and we've seen it backfire way more than it's ever helped anybody. And anybody that cuts out anybody that I've ever seen cut out sugar is glad that they do when they've done it, and then when they reintroduce it, it's just like that text message that I got earlier today. I see it all the time, man. And then you got people that are always like, oh, well, you can put fruit back in, you can add this and you can add that, and it's not the same. Man, it is the same. It's all sugar.
So, and that's what that fructose and honey study illustrate, is that it negatively affects the body. Doesn't matter if it's natural, but spot on. Look, I've worked with thousands and thousands of clients who live and thrive on this lifestyle, who have massively transformed their health and well-being. Myself, prime example. I couldn't walk up the stairs. You know, as I said, you know, when we came on the air, I was in a bad place in my mid-20s. I'm now 40, and I went on to become a professional, not only a professional in the world of bodybuilding, but a British and European champion at a pro level. And I'd been doing it for an incredibly short space of time. And I beat everybody who was supplementing with anabolics, because I competed in tested and non-tested federations. People who supplemented with anabolics, people who were all on carbohydrate, and I was number one in Europe in my category. There were two other people that I knew of who were ketogenic, both of which, so one was a police officer. He won his category in the British Championship, so he became number one in the British Championship in his category, and he was ketogenic. The other guy was also in his category, and he came second. So the three of us, out of everyone that competes, basically we came first and second out of everyone. Think of that as a percentage. Every athlete I've worked with who removes carbohydrates improves their athletic performance. And as you say, this advice is free. You know, you don't have to take it on board. If it works for you, that's fine. Do not rip apart the people who are coming onto social media and telling you that.
Sorry, the advice is definitely free, because I sell metabolic nutrition products. I sell keto bricks. You sell KETO PRO stuff. We're saying don't even buy the stuff that we sell, and just do what we're telling you. Just prioritize red meat, water, and salt. Sorry, finish.
No, exactly. 100% spot on. You know, I had a client today message within my private group saying, how can I reduce acid reflux? This person eats the bars that I make, but she eats too much of them. She doesn't eat enough protein or enough saturated fats. And, you know, I've had to tell her quite sharply within this group, stop eating my bars, go and eat some eggs, go and eat some beef and lamb. You need fat. Your body is starving. You can't live on lean protein. So I talked myself out. I'm telling this person not to consume my product because they are not doing things the way they should be.
I talk myself out of sales in my consultations all the time. Like, I need protein powder to build muscle right now, dude. Red meat, water, salt. Yeah.
So look, you know, it's these people who are posting about their achievements, their life transformations, they are spreading the word. They're teaching the world about this phenomenon that is sweeping the world, the carnivore ketogenic lifestyle, and they're offering this information for free. Do not come on and shoot them down just because you are a sugar addict. You are a drug addict. You are addicted to sugar.
Yep.
Carbohydrates is sugar. Sugar's a drug. It's more addictive than heroin. You are addicted to your carbohydrate. Just because you cannot give it up, do not put someone else down because they are thriving on the lifestyle. All these people are doing is telling the world that the lifestyle they are living is conferring a huge benefit. They're not telling you to do the same. If you want to go and try it, fantastic. If you don't, that's fine. Do not shoot those people down. These people are making a fantastic difference to people's lives all over the world.
Heck yeah. Let's end on that. Bro, where can people go to find out more about you and everything that you're doing right now?
Legend. What am I? Do you know? Coming back to the whole business thing, I am absolutely useless. So I'm Richard Smith. You can find me under Richard_Anthony_Smith on Instagram. Also the Keto Pro on Instagram. I'm the Keto Pro on YouTube. YouTube is a good platform to follow me on. I go live in YouTube in my private group, which is free to join on Mighty Networks. And you can find that in the link on any of my social networks. I go live in there on Mondays at 5 p.m. GMT. It's a Zoom type conference. People can come in and ask for, they ask for advice, questions, etc. for free. I also go live on a Sunday at 7 p.m. GMT on YouTube. And again, so that's for an hour, 7 till 8. Then on Rumble between 8 and 9. And then Team Carnivore GB on Tuesdays, again at 7 p.m. GMT. All of these platforms are free. I'm not charging. You can come along, ask questions, have advice for
guys,
free.
take advantage of it. No offense, but I don't do that. Like I just don't. I mean, like I do not have time to do it. I don't know how you have how you prioritize time to do that, Richard. You are my hero. Wow. Yeah, guys, if you're not taking advantage of that, I'm putting links to all that in the show notes of this podcast. Please make sure that go ask him some questions, guys. Get to know this guy. He really cares.
It's free. It's free. Get on there, ask some questions. If you want everything you can think of is available on my YouTube channel. If you do not want to troll through that, you can arrange a paid consultation, a private consultation with myself. That again is available in the link. Then we can get into the nitty gritty, and but as you say, there's umpteen opportunity for free advice. So get on board, take advantage, throw in those questions, and let's make some shit happen. Sorry, am I allowed to swear?
I already did. Who cares at this point?
Awesome.
Well, that is it for this week's session, everybody. Thanks for listening, and make sure to let us know what you thought. You can do that directly from your podcast app or DM Mark or myself on Instagram. You can also email your feedback, questions for us, and more specific topics that you'd like us to teach on next. TikTok. If you are on TikTok, we are definitely over there. We are throwing out bite-sized carnivore tips from top nutritionists and coaches and from athletes that are putting into practice what we preach on this channel. We are showing lots of meal prep, cooking tips, and budgeting hacks. And lately, we are busting bad coaches that spread misinformation. So warning, if you are one of those bad online coaches that Mark was talking about earlier, spreading misinformation, we're definitely going to call you out. If you need some gym motivation, look no further than our workout podcast called the SupersetYourLife.com podcast. We are well over 200 episodes on that channel. Actually, a couple of them even have Richard Anthony Smith on that one. We tend to talk about family and other subjects that aren't related to the carnivore diet on that one. So that show is available on the same platform that you are listening to now. Just type Superset Your Life, all one word, into your search bar, and you will see our black and white podcast logo pop up. It's a podcast that is specifically recorded to listen to while you work out. We regularly interview professional bodybuilders and judges, top nutritionists, leadership experts, stand-up comedians, and top athletes from SupersetYourLife.com. We keep the focus on health-first bodybuilding, faith, and family. My wife Taylor and I are the hosts of that show as of close to 4 years and growing now, and Coach Mark Ennis has been an enormous part of all we do there too. Mark and I are both on IG and offer private one-on-one consultations as well as coaching services. Links to schedule coaching calls can be found on our Instagram bios or in the show notes of this podcast. One more reminder before we sign off. Leaving a review just takes like 10 seconds. And so if you are on Spotify, for example, where you can see in the show notes, right below that, it says Q&A. And that's where you can tell us exactly what you think. We will respond when we record the following week, either by reading your review or discussing the topic that you would like to know more about, or even really by getting to work on whatever critiques that you have about how we can continue to improve this show. And I'm talking sound quality, I'm talking music, I'm talking whatever you guys want to be able to make this a better audio experience so that you can better understand these concepts that we're trying to communicate. Please. That's how we communicate, as a dialogue, not a monologue, back and forth in this intimate conversation that we call Carnivore Coaches Corner. Thanks a lot, everybody. Share this with your friend if you found it helpful. We'll catch you next week on session number 44. Let's go.